just want to make sure I say your name right. So it's, and this is the great part about Twitch. It's like really kind of different names on here. So it's a challenge for intellectually, unastute person like me, but it's Sondsol.
Sondsol, yeah. Or you can call me by my first name. My first name is Walt, like Walt Disney.
Well, Walt's not attractive. Sondsol. So, but we'll have fun. What's some topics you want to get into?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about what you do on your stream or your show or whatever, so I'm willing to just kind of roll with whatever. I talk about basically any topic that people want to talk to me about. So
I'm a political guy in a lot of ways. I'm a former politician here in Connecticut. I grew a 40-acre hemp farm. I'm still in the hemp business. I've also got a little bit of a production team that we're working with, doing some development stuff. I mainly stay in my lane, which is commentary on the current events of the day on my show. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll just get to know each other. How's that sound? And usually that's kind of the most organic way.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
We'll begin here in a moment. I'll bring you back on, and we'll be introducing you, Walt, okay?
All right.
We're going to go right into it. This is our Monday night Twitch night, and we got our new friend we're going to meet tonight from the Twitch world is Walt Sondsol. I think I said it right, but I'm going to bring Walt on now. I just met him. So, Walt, how are you, first of all, and welcome to the show.
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm sorry about all the commercials. Maybe that's a little different from what you're used to in the
no, it's totally
ultra cool Twitch world.
No, they on Twitch they have a lot of like integrated ads, so people will have they'll have their ad in the middle of a segment. So maybe they'll do like for me, I did a sponsor for a cooking company, and I just cooked and talked about cooking while doing it, or played a cooking game. Cool. Yeah, so
let's learn a little bit about you, and the folks, mostly the ones on my side, are going to know, on my side are going to know exactly what I do, which is kind of political, social commentary of the day, have guests on, do all that during the day. But at night, I try to have special guests on. I do some documentary stuff too. But more importantly, our Monday night Twitch interviews have been really, really, I think, eye-opening for me. A lot of great content developers out there, a lot of people that are out there in different, I guess I'd say different lanes, but a lot of the same topics being covered. Talk why you, Walt, or I'm going to call you Walt because it's your first name, but why are you with Twitch and not Facebook or YouTube or one of those things? And talk a little bit about your platform.
So originally when I first started streaming, it was during the pandemic, and I was streaming to Facebook and YouTube and to Twitch. I was basically just casting a wide net. And once I got a reasonable following on Twitch, I got the opportunity to be accepted into their affiliate program, which has some amount of like exclusivity to it. So when you do your content on Twitch, you can't be streaming it to YouTube at the same time. So that's why I'm on Twitch primarily, but also because there's a lot of people on Twitch that around the same age as me, that are that have a lot of the same values as I do, and also there's a kind of burgeoning political sphere here where everybody kind of goes in on each other and argues about politics. The communists against the liberals, against the conservatives, against the like white nationalists. Everyone's just kind of going at each other. That's why I'm on Twitch as opposed to anything else.
Pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about you. I mean, I'm interested because I think a lot of the folks that I've met so far on Twitch have some sort of either involvement with the military. Did you serve?
I almost did, but I ended up deciding against that. There are a lot of people, especially in the conservative area of Twitch, that are veterans. There's CTV, Critically Thinking Veteran.
Talk to him.
Oh yeah, he's a really cool
had
dude.
Him on, man. He's great. I can't wait to have him back on. He's got a really cool kind of way about, libertarian way.
Yeah, he's a really funny, interesting dude. I love that guy to death. We disagree on a lot of stuff, but, at the end of the day, you can tell he's a really sincere, good person. So, oh, Lord, what was the question that you just asked me?
No, I was asking, you said you didn't serve in the military. That's fine. I really, it just seems like a lot of the folks on Twitch that I've met so far have been, even last week, I had 2 medics that got on with us, and I've been working all day, so I apologize. But
no, you're fine.
A lot of different guests that we've had on Twitch have been people who have served in the military. And I find that to be something about Twitch which is attractive, I think, to the people that I'm speaking to, the creators like yourself, is it's kind of got a little less structure from what I'm being told than say some of the other platforms?
Yeah, so like Twitch is exclusively just live streaming. You're not gonna come here and see a bunch of pre-planned videos where someone's talking for, an hour at length where they've edited the video together and have a million sources. It's a lot of off-the-cuff stuff. It's a lot of gut reactions to things, live reactions to things. So it's very loosey goosey the way that we talk about almost every single topic. And on every single panel, it could go really, really well and everyone's calm and everyone's having a good time. Or, someone could say one thing that sets someone else off and then it just turns into a massive shit show. So I'm sorry. Am I allowed to curse on your show? I don't want to.
Well, yeah, no,
Okay.
no, this is fine. You can curse away. Fuck
Gotcha.
yeah, have some fun. If you want to have some fucking fun swearing, go ahead.
All right. Got it.
So interesting because I think Twitch again. I think a lot of folks Discord, Twitch is that concept of gamer, right? It's like,
Yeah.
are,
Very
are
much
you
a
a
gamer.
gamer, or is that something that kind of got you in here?
I think part of it, yeah. I've had a Twitch account for a very long time, and over the past couple of years, I've on and off streamed and played a game, and just tried to get a couple of people in chat to talk while I played the game. Now it's much more political oriented for me, and I'll play a video game while watching someone else's video and commenting on that, or while I'm talking to someone else, I'll be playing kind of an idle game. But I don't know if I would consider myself a gamer per se. I'm not very good at video games. That's one of the things that people come and watch me for, I think, is how bad I am at them, and they can all, collectively laugh at me, and we're all having a good time with it. So,
Well, I mean, humbly saying I'm probably worse than you at any video game. So believe me, Walt, you will beat me every day. What do you do in the real world? Do you mind mentioning? Do you talk about that?
yeah, right now what I'm doing is Twitch full time. I've been doing Twitch full time for probably about a year ish. But I'm ready to get back into college right now. Before that, before I did Twitch full time, I was doing a lot of stuff with animal medicine. I worked in lots of vet clinics, a lot of really upscale like dog kennels and stuff. I learned a lot about dog training and pet behavior and stuff like that. So I did that for about 10 years, and then I stopped doing that, went to Twitch, and now I'm getting back into college and going into education.
So Twitch can actually pay the bills.
It can if you're smart about it, and if you are able to leverage popularity, and you have a following that is willing to donate to you or sub to you or anything like that.
Interesting. I have not. So I've been doing this kind of platform thing here for about a year in a couple different lanes. Finally landed like this, total control of my own destiny.
Mm.
Was kind of looking at it going with partnerships and things like that, and all that stuff just didn't really materialize. And not so much partners, but more production people that could help. And I went back to the raw where I'm just doing it in our house and kind of doing interviews. And I like it this way. I do like the more professional, but I noticed on Twitch when I have had the chance to review, it's very organic. Like you said, it's live and living color. So I really should look into it. I mean, I think my version of conversations would actually flourish on Twitch. I just haven't really, I got to man up and do it. So I got to throw my nuts on the table.
Yeah, it's a fun platform. There's a lot of people that you can interact with here that are either very, very, very ready to argue with you if they disagree with you. They want to do that on stream, and everybody has a good time doing that. There's also a lot of people that will want to have really calm discussions and just kind of hang out. It's a really fun place. I really like it. But being able to do the multi-streaming is really good for growth long term. So that's also something that I'm looking at, maybe breaking the affiliate contract that I have and trying to do some YouTube streaming as well. So we'll have to see.
So if you did, say you went over there and you tried to use your same name, your brand, and they found out, Twitch would then dump you from the affiliate.
Oh no! Just as long as I'm not streaming to YouTube and Twitch at the exact same time. But if I stream,
can you stream this? Can you stream to Facebook at the same time?
No, it's just if you sign this contract, it's just to Twitch. But you can, depending on how much you leverage, you can like negotiate with them to where you can do multi-streaming. It just really depends, like on what your contract says. So.
Okay, so that's interesting. I'm gonna have to look into Twitch a little further. All right, so let's say that this is an average time you're up streaming, you're on live, and you're getting into the discussions.
Mhm.
What's the typical conversations that you're going to have on your platform on Twitch?
Yeah.
Give me a variety of topics.
So I really like to talk about a whole bunch of different things. I like talking a lot about politics. That's why I primarily got into streaming in the first place. There was a lot of really crazy shit happening in 2020 that there was a lot to talk about. So that's kind of how I got my start. But I grew an appreciation for learning a lot about economics, a lot about philosophy, a lot about psychology over the course of the past 2.5 years doing this. So it can really be about anything. There's a lot of really serious conversations around policy, politics, but there's also like the interpersonal nature of, you're constantly arguing with the same people, like you become a name in the community here, and then other people want to talk to you. So like it could be, a lot of drama that happens, which a lot of people have been complaining about recently. There's a lot of discussions about deplatforming and who deserves to be deplatformed. There's a lot of discussions around, uh I'm trying to think. A lot of it has to do with like platforming, whether you're talking to people that are appropriate to have on your show, or whether you shouldn't have your own platform yourself, is a big one right now. But
That's interesting because
yeah,
even on Twitch, there's kind of a, I wouldn't say a movement, but there's a discussion of silencing people because of a difference of opinion. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
yeah, especially right now. I'm actually kind of in a little bit of a Twitter tiff with some people that I've talked to many times before, where it seems like we're crossing into the realm of it just deplatforming people because you
Like
don't like them.
censorship? You're getting
Yeah.
into like a censorship
Yeah,
thing?
just like straight censorship. And you don't, it like, one of the bad things about Twitch, after I've gassed it up so much, one of the bad things about Twitch is if you get banned, you won't always know exactly the reason why. They'll give you a broad reason. So, for example, I got deplatformed for hate speech, or I can't remember the other word, but basically like hate speech. But I don't know what I said because I don't really say any kind of slurs on my stream. You just don't know. They'll give you like the broad reason and then the time frame. There's
You
another,
want to know what I think? Well,
yeah,
and it's Walter or Walt. Can I call you Walt?
either way.
I feel like we're cousins, and we'll connect here, buddy. But you know what I think? I think everyone is just a little too soft in the middle, and a little too afraid to hear a different opinion.
I
And
think that there's,
I think you got snitches and rats who probably use the system in some way to file those complaints. I mean, it happened to me several times. And you know what I enjoy most is I enjoy the fact that these sea urchins, these scum of the
yeah,
earth, because honestly, they're the same people, by the way, Walt. They want to be heard on every topic. They'll yell louder than you, and when you can't, they can't defeat you with common sense. Then they try to attack you with sort of behind the scenes stuff.
yeah. I've kind of waffled between extremes on this position for a while, but I'm starting to kind of understand where I'm at truly. When it comes to these sorts of things, I grew up in a very diverse area, right? I live in Houston, Texas, right? So there's a lot of people who are all like different races, different ethnicities, different nationalities, who are all here, all kind of melting potted together, and it was a really cool experience growing up in that environment, right? I grew up around poor kids and rich kids and middle class kids all in the same classrooms. I grew up with, Muslims and Christians and Jewish kids. And uh, I think that growing up in that kind of environment, and also through the beginnings of the internet age, right? I'm 26, so I saw kind of like the very beginnings of 4chan and Facebook, and the kind of fights that would happen on those platforms. And I think that a lot of people, especially younger than me, um, haven't had to deal with people that like actually disagree with them, or actually have massive what's the word I'm looking for, you know
Life
fundamental,
experience,
yeah, life
maybe a little
experience,
less.
life
Yeah.
experience, like fundamental, like views on the world, right? So like for me, I grew up in an environment where there's a lot of different people, a lot of different like classes all mixing together. I saw like middle class white kids hanging out with poor black kids, and they were told that they have the pass to say the N word and stuff, and so there were just kids like walking around, what's up my N, like soft A in the high school, and most people really didn't care. It wasn't that big of a deal. But now if you know if you even talk about like, hey, that person probably wasn't racist when he was using the N word there, right? Yeah, people will get really really
Joe
upset.
Rogan, right? I mean, if anyone's in this business, Joe Rogan's probably the best example. And I say in business, I mean, you're getting paid to do what you do. I actually receive a little money to do what I'm doing, so it's a business. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
for
here to
sure. Yeah,
try to
absolutely.
monetize. So it is, and I look at somebody like Joe Rogan. Well, I kind of go, wow, the fact of the matter is, he said some jokes back 10, 20, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be
He's
that big a
still
deal.
still apologizing. It's
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
it's really weird to me, that there's a way that the world ought to be, and we can say like, yes, we ought not have a bunch of people running around using racial slurs all the time. That's probably a bad thing, right? And that's the way the world ought be. But the way that the world is a little bit more complicated, right? Uh, it's probably good to be able to look at someone who is using the N word in a certain context and not immediately crucify them, right? Or like there was a situation that happened yesterday on kind of YouTuber Twitch communities where there was a guy that was like recently 18 years old, who was flirting with another person who was a high school age. But because he was 18 and they were younger than him, they were trying to, you know, kind of completely cancel him, ruin the rest of his life, saying that he was a pedophile. When it's like the
Well, I
world
mean,
is a little bit more gray.
how old was the girl, Walt?
I
I mean,
think
was she
I think
12?
no, 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 high school age. I think she was either 15 or 16, but he had just turned 18. So it's like they're both in high school
Well,
age. And
there's there's what, dude, and I get you on that one. And I'm a father. By the way, my children are 25 and 22, so you're not
oh
much.
my gosh, I would
You're in around
never have
my.
thought. You look like you're in your like mid 30s, my dude.
Well, man, you can't bring me out for a drink, so stop that stuff. No, but I appreciate it. But it's funny because I love talking to across the boards, and the fact that you're willing to have political conversations, social conversations, and be brave enough to sort of have all that. That's a promise to me for the future. I love that part of your generation. There's a lot more of you, I think, than were in the previous generation. I think a lot more younger people in your, you say five either way, kind of 10 year swing,
Mm,
seem to be more intrigued with having the conversation. I think the people 40, they're like fed up. They don't want to deal with the people
yeah,
younger. Like, I don't want to deal with it. But
I
you
started
guys are going
noticing
to
that.
be, what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say though, Walt, it's really going to fall on you. It's really going to fall on your generation.
which is kind of terrifying. I see this kind of bell curve of willing to accept other people where older than me. I see a lot of people that are disaffected, whether they're on the right or the left. Like there's this one guy that I've gotten into many arguments with in the past couple of weeks, who is much further left than I am. And I've talked to some people and they say he's just really disaffected. He doesn't see any actual change happening in the system, and so he's kind of anti-establishment now. He doesn't believe in voting. He just wants to burn it all down and build something new. And that really it is antithetical to the way that I see things. And someone who's like an incrementalist that wants to see progress happen, but I don't want to fuck over people that are maybe a little bit more to the right of me, or maybe a little bit more skeptical of some of my beliefs, right? I don't want to completely sell them out. Where on the other side of that, the people that are much younger than me, they're like, you're either good or you're bad, and fuck you if you're a conservative, and if you don't like 100% buy into like every single Medicare for all and relieving all, like forgiving all student loan debt,
Because
and
they're fine. Walt, they're socialists. And
yeah,
and I mean, that's a difference, I think. And I'm not trying to label, but we're talking about why someone feel, and I don't believe they are specifically socialists, but they've been educated in a system, and there's clear fact to that. I mean, the education system is very geared towards sort of anti structure of the American government system. They're actually encouraging challenging. And by the way, I think that's a good thing. I think challenging our
yeah.
government is exactly what generations should do.
I would
But
say
they're a
that
little bit
the
more like, hey, the government's supposed to pay my bills. I
Well,
don't have to get up and
this is the
work.
way that I think it is, because I also fell into the socialism trap for a while, right? I I saw how fucked the world was, especially like you stay on Facebook, you stay on Twitter, you stay on any of these websites for long enough, and you're going to see, just the absolute worst things that are happening in the world. And you think that, okay, well, obviously it's time to burn the whole system down and start with something new, or move us towards a system that doesn't involve, capital being the dominant force of power in the world. But I think that it's less education systems, because I think, as someone, I graduated in 2014. I didn't really get massive like anti-establishment education. I got a lot of education around like what our governmental systems were, basic econ, like 101 stuff. But what I think the education that people are getting that pushes them down these like extremist routes, whether down the extreme far right path or down the extreme far left path, is the internet. There's so much access to this information now, where people can see the world through a very particular lens and never have to see it through someone else's point of view. And over the past couple of months, I think that that's the thing that I've noticed the most. It's very cancerous to any kind of discussion that you could possibly have. And one of the things that I feel like I was really fortunate to be able to experience throughout my life is I grew up in the deep fucking South. Okay, I was born in Arkansas, and then I moved to Texas. Right, so everyone around me was, for the most part, either centrist or conservative, with some exceptions, with some people that were, kind of Clinton Democrats or something like that. I got to interact with people that didn't believe the same way as me, and I'm able to, be empathetic towards them and understand why they believe the things that they do, and explain why, from my perspective, the things that they are advocating for in terms of like trying to fix the problems isn't the way to go about it.
How much do you think corporate media, that whole nonsense, the political side, is just screwing with both of us? And at the end of the day, just gaming on us, laughing in the back room.
Oh man, this is really hard. It's so hard to talk about media literacy. So on one hand, yes, the mainstream media, which is kind of expanding to a lot of online spaces now, but the mainstream media is going to sell you a perspective that they have, right? But I think that how much they're able to move society in one direction or the other has been kind of overstated, to the point where now just like mainstream media is like a boogeyman title for anything that you don't like. And I see it on both the left and the right. And a lot of people in the center too. Like I feel like there's just this kind of massive pushback against mainstream media without understanding how to more effectively engage with those things. I think it's fine to look at things like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, or, any of like the cable news things. I think it's fine if you're not trying to be ultra informed. But if you want to be, like one step above, the average person that just sees, like a Sean Hannity bit or a Tucker Carlson segment, or Don Lemon, or I'm sorry, I don't watch a lot of cable news, but whoever's like the people that are, having their shows. I think that if you want to be slightly more informed, knowing how to look at what things are opinions and what things are like the basic facts of a story, right? And being able to recognize that they're not incentivized to lie in the way that you would think. They might be incentivized to push a narrative, but the narrative isn't necessarily a lie. And we can dig more deeply into that if you want.
No,
It's
no,
just like very
no.
complicated.
I like the organics. We're just
Yeah.
kind of having this conversation again. This is the Kevin Allen Show. We do the show here on Mondays with our Twitch guys, and our guy David kind of hooks us up with all these very interesting guests. And the thing is that I think about this whole crossover platform is the sort of the decorum on each platform is specific to the platform you're on. So if you're on YouTube, there's a certain conversation you can push the limits to. Twitch, the same thing. But you have so many choices now. I think a lot of folks are going into the alternative places where they
Yeah.
promise not to censor. Let me ask you about a word, censor, because you brought it up earlier. Do you believe there should be any form of censorship in when it comes to free speech?
Yes, but I think I'm more permissive than a lot of people on my side would be. I don't like I don't like the idea of just deplatforming people for like a singular word. I don't think that I like the idea of deplatforming people for um, telling edgy jokes or anything like that. The thing that I would set my bar at is like gross deliberate misinformation, which is incredibly hard to actually set into a terms of service policy, right? So it's really difficult. But when it comes to deplatforming people, if people are like just being, kind of horrible people and harassing people, I think that yeah, you can lose your account for that. If you're going to spread like pedophilia or anything illegal, yeah, you could be deplatformed for that. And if you're being this might be like contentious. It's just like the most recent example of this I can think of, but there are other examples of it in the past couple of years. But if like you're being paid by like Russia Today to sell like a very specific narrative that doesn't take into account anyone's perspective but Russia's, right? I think that that's also something that can be banned, but that one's so difficult to legislate around or to make a written rule that I don't know how I would even feel comfortable putting into effect, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because I sit here and when you're talking about some of the reasons that I completely get what you're saying and understand some of your perspective on that, and it kind of I get this shock up the back of my spine saying, you know what, fuck that. You know what we need in the world? We need the ability for us to hit the block button, and just if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to come near me, and that's your choice, not my choice. And I just wish it was a little more like that in the world where it's freedom of choice versus these forced perimeters, because if I
Yeah.
don't say the way you want me to say it and it's something that offends you and you get triggered, well, you're gonna file a complaint
No,
against
I
me and
100%
I'm done.
agree. Yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be something that is like personally offensive to someone. It shouldn't be anything like that. And people should learn that you can block people on Twitter, okay? I don't block people on Twitter because I like fighting with people. I love arguing. It's just something that I've always loved doing, right? I love getting like down into the shit with people and rolling around in the mud, and I like having reasonable discussions. But like, if I don't want to interact with someone anymore, or I don't want them to interact with me, it's so easy to just block them, right? I think that I might have filled out like maybe 3 reports in my entire life, maybe, and that was for like gross, egregious misbehavior for like
I mean, if someone
harassment
said,
or
hey,
yeah,
listen, well,
illegal
if somebody's sending you
activities.
naked pictures or they're
Yeah,
trying to put your personal information out there, there's every reason to
yeah.
follow up. And I think those are it's almost like law on the street. You walk by somebody, fucking, they say something to you, you don't want to engage them, whatever the case is. Well, if someone throws fists and there's a fight, there's a violation now. But
Mhm.
just words in itself, if I don't say to you, hey, I'm going to kill you or some stupid shit like that, there should be no if it's just, hey, I like Donald Trump. You like Joe Biden. Oh my God, 45. Let's go, let's go burn
For
down the
sure, yeah.
castle. It's kind of bullshit.
Yeah. I agree. Like
On
that
both
sort of
sides,
thing
by the
is
way. I'm not just saying one side. But
yeah.
that's a definite trigger on both sides. People want to be, and I do tend to think, and it's not because this is the side of the argument I typically lean towards, but I do think conservatives are more apt to be more open of discussion. In fact, they enjoy twisting the titties of liberals on a constant basis,
I think
and it's so easy to do.
I think that it shifts. I think that in the past, like especially when I first started getting on, online and like watching YouTube past like, just like Family Guy clips or like cat videos. It was like 2014, right after I graduated from high school. And back then, I think that the right was very, very closed off. Like if you didn't like 100% agree with their form of like right wing thought, you could be cast out from your social circles pretty fucking easily. Like you could see this like with the rise and the fall of the alt right Nick Fuentes, and I don't know if you know all these names, but a bunch of like white nationalist type people. Like some of them believed in a full white ethno state, and some of them believed in like more constitutional stuff, and so they got into fights, and then they splintered out, and they splintered out until they lost.
They did a documentary with him on, was it on HBO or something? It was a doc on him.
I've heard about that, but I need to watch it. But yeah,
He's friends with it. I have a lawyer that comes on here. Norm Pattis is the attorney's name. He's actually representing Alex Jones,
Oh
and
wow.
Norm comes on the show a lot. And he actually is friendly with him. He actually tried to get him on my show before, and I'm going to see if. But here's the deal with the white nationalist conversation, because we're talking about what's censored or not. And we had one of our real friend of the show, contributor, Christopher Strum, who actually wrote the book Brooklyn to Baghdad. He's a New York City retired cop.
Hmm.
Goes on Newsmax and shit. And he just said basically, listen, as long as you qualify, your opinion on the show, and it's not featured, the show, it should be kind of open. It should be free to say whatever you want. And freedom of speech is one of those things that's very, very interesting, because I don't really think freedom of speech in the document that we interpret meant everything that maybe I see, and it might not mean everything that you see.
Yeah, no,
It's
of
an
course.
interpretation. And I think the flat out opportunity is, hey, if we get on a show and I say, look, you're coming on my show, my platform, I'm going to, I have Tourette's and I yell fuck all the time. And so if you can't handle it, fuck,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
well, come on.
Yeah. For me, like there's always going to be disagreements about like how far freedom of speech should go. For me, again, like I think it's fine for people to go on and like argue about certain topics. I think that you shouldn't be banned. So like if you're like talking about slurs, right? Instead of people saying N word over and over time, I think people that are mature should be able to say the word in a discussion about the word rather than referencing it by saying N word or
I ain't never
F slur.
touching that word.
Right? Yeah, I'm not either. I'm not either because like I'm not about to
You
get.
know why I'm not touching it? It's not because I'm afraid of the word, because I'm probably the most comfortable white dude you ever met around people of alternative. I've worked in the prison system for 21 years, and that's not the people I qualify as the people I associate with, but I've dealt with all social, economic, religious, and ethnic classes.
Mm.
And I think one of the words that we do get really hung up on, but there's a lot to that word that we shouldn't be saying. And I know why we shouldn't say it, but I also know it's been politicized. It's been a weapon. It's been weaponized in order to divide us in discussions. That's why Joe Rogan talked about pushing back against the concept of the COVID reaction from the federal government. Well, all of a sudden, the rain just came pouring down on Joe Rogan, and everything that he did in his past, including a comedian who stepped on a stage like Chris Rock, or you can name them all. He's saying comedy, and that's where I get it kind of twisted. If I tell you that I'm a news media show, but I really am satire, and I try to be a little bit humorous about the way we approach things.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's debates, but at the end of the day, though, we shouldn't get mad at each other if we kind of say things to the edge. I think we should allow it.
Yeah, I think that I think we should allow it. I agree. What the lines for me are very, very permissive. Because I think that it, on one hand, you could say like, okay, so if we let the far left or the far right have a voice on the internet, then we're going to see like these like crazy extremists rise up, and then we're going to see violence that come out of that. And we have seen that kind of violence come out of both right wing and left wing circles over the past couple of years. I worry about the left wing seeing an increase in that. But I think that the reason that a lot of people, especially like MAGA Republicans, and further right than that, and then a lot of like really far lefties, the reason that they get like pushed to these like kind of extremes, or seeming extremes from someone that's like way more in the middle, is because they don't feel like they're able to say these things out loud without being fucking dogpiled, without having literally all their connections on Twitter or Facebook or like any of these other platforms ripped away from them. Like they're never going to be convinced otherwise if there's no dialogue. If it's just suppress, then people are going to push back against that until there's some sort of breaking point. Either they're destroyed or they become the new popular opinion, and that's something that I kind of worry about.
Definitely, a good conversation here with Walt, our new friend, Sondsol. How do I say it?
Sondsol.
Sondsol. Is that your actual last name?
No. It's just a name I've used forever. It's because I'm on a gaming website. It's the thing that I've used as my gamer tag forever. So
So how did you come up with a name like seriously? Were
I
you
was
really high one night? Were you drinking a lot of
no, I'm not.
PBRs? How do you come up with that name?
I think I must have been like 8 years old, dude. I have no
All right,
fucking
you
clue
hope
where it
you weren't
comes
drinking
from.
then.
Yeah,
Okay.
certainly not. I was mostly straight edge until I was like 24. So
What do you think? What do you think about legalizing marijuana?
it probably should be legalized. I can't. I've never seen like a really good, adequate argument for keeping it illegal. So
What about the decriminalizing of drugs?
decriminalizing, yes. Legalizing, I think on a case by case basis. I think that when you decriminalize
So like we
something,
could be like the purge. We could do coke one weekend a month or a
no, no,
year.
no. I
In
would
your
say
opinion,
like
in your world.
I would say like illegalizing like the sale of it, but like decriminalizing it for possession might make it to where it is easier for people that have problems like let's say with opiates or something like that to seek help because they're not scared of being thrown in prison for like long periods of time. We can see this that kind of policy in I think in Sweden and I think in Portugal, uh, where it's all these people that were heavily addicted to drugs were able to seek help, were able to get past their addiction and lead more productive lives going forward. And I think that that's
Hundred
like
percent.
yeah, that's the sort of stuff that I
You
would
know
like to
what?
see.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I served. I think I told you before we started too. I served in the state house as a state representative in the 45th House seat.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm proud that in 2016 I got elected to the 45th House seat when the greatest president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was elected as the president in the
Hmm.
45th. So I was on the same ballot with him. Is my point. I am a corrections officer, retired, pro law enforcement. I am going to say for the fact that I've seen firsthand the benefits of CBD, hemp based products that now are legal since 2018, but I've also seen the recreational marijuana and medical marijuana in particularly, how it's helped with PTSD, how it's helped with chronic pain, and how it's avoided people from being addicted. And most studies across this country, because I was on some of these. I was on the public safety committee, so I had to hear all this stuff. And a lot of the committee's hearings that we had, we were finding out in states that actually legalize recreational or marijuana, there was less likely people overdosing from heroin, and heroin use drops. So
Hmm.
I think there's a credibility to this claim, and I think it's time as well.
Yeah, there's something that people have been hitting on a lot of liberal state governments recently. I think especially I heard an NPR story about people being pretty upset about it. I think in New York, I think that there was this, something here in Houston where basically the the argument that people are kind of strawmanning is uh, that Biden or the Democrats are giving away free drugs to people. But in reality, there are these very specific centers where people can go to detox, right? And a lot of times, if you don't know this, like if anybody in the audience doesn't know this, like if you just cold turkey stop using heroin, that the withdrawals can kill you. So there are these centers that people have been opening up as like a testing way to make sure that this works in like broader scales where people can go in, they can use the drugs that they're addicted to in a controlled environment where if they end up overdosing there's immediate medical help, right, where they can slowly wean off of their the drugs that they're addicted to. And I think that that's a really really cool thing. And it's something that we should look into rather than having a gut reaction and saying, "Well, you're just giving all these druggies needles. How dare you? Oh, look, they're all the Democrats just love all these druggies on our streets." Blah blah. It's more nuanced than that, you know.
It doesn't help when Joe Biden gets up to the podium and makes stupid comments to allude towards some of that stuff going on. I mean,
Yeah,
let's face it, if you
Democrats'
like it or
messaging is
not. I
one
mean,
of the
it,
worst
it gets
things they
politicized,
have.
but he certainly set up a lot of that energy on his own. But I agree with you. You know that the reality is, look, I think it's time for us to consider these facts. Methanone's been around; it's not working. It's actually just, if anything, I think it's created more extensive drug use with the methadone clinics across this country. They've done the best they can. I know a few success stories, but let's face it. I think it takes about 9 failures for heroin to actually overcome. And by the way, I've witnessed alcohol withdrawals, which is much, much worse physically than
Mhm.
than a heroin over addiction. So, but both we seem to agree on this one. So we'll kind of move it forward.
Mhm.
What's your stance on gun control? Seems like there's a lot of folks with a lot of opinions. What's yours?
I feel like I make everybody angry with my opinion. For me, I grew up around guns. My grandfather was an Eagle Scout. He took us hunting. You know, like I've fired shotguns, I've fired rifles. I haven't had the opportunity to shoot a handgun, but you know, like it's just you know, I've always grown up around them. I know all the safety things. I know that there are people that are very responsible with their firearms, and I think that that's fine. Um, the thing that I would want to address with any kind of gun legislation that I would support would be either gang violence, so making it harder for people to get guns or illegally transport guns, and try and see if there's a way to fix that. Which there are things that I've floated that people have kind of agreed with. So like, gang violence mostly happens with handguns, so trying to control that. The other thing that I really, really want to see if there's a way to curb is the mass shootings. I grew up in an environment where we were starting to have the schools lockdown drills where everyone had to hide in the room because there were so many school shootings going on that you know we had to prepare for them. And that's something that I really wish people were willing to engage with in a real way. So on the left, I really hate the arguments that we should get rid of all guns because number one, it's never going to happen in the United States. There are more guns than there are people. Two, I wish that liberals, like broadly liberals, a lot of leftists are very pro-gun, but liberals broadly, they see a gun that looks scary and they want to ban that kind of gun, like an AR-15, right? But what is it? A mini something is basically the exact same gun. And you know it's semi-auto. You can have it 22 or 5.57. Like it's very comparable. You just can't have as many attachments on it. Like I don't think that any kind of blanket gun ban will ever work. On the other side of things, on the conservative side, there are some people that say any restriction on firearms is against the Second Amendment and we should never ever do it. It's like, bro, Chicago, there's lots of people fucking dying over there, okay, to handguns, okay? So like maybe we could do like something to try and curb the epidemic of gun violence in the United States, not just mass shootings, but also gang violence. And the United States is very unique in the gun violence that we see, you know? So
Well, you a couple of the facts that are obviously standing out. There are more guns than Americans,
yep.
and I think one of the fundamental rights and why this scientific experiment of the American Constitution has been so strongly established in this country has been the fact that we as citizens have had a chance to stand up against our government, and I think that's one of the constitutional facts that's constantly brought up. I know people who are in the modern day world of interpretation of our Constitution often say, you know, that's not what it meant. That's not what it said. But I
Mm.
think that debate is a healthy one. I definitely don't. I don't support restricting legal gun owners from any, acquiring any weapons that are approved or right. And you know, one of these problems we have in this country is just like with, and I'll correlate how I'll kind of connect the two. So with birth with pro-choice.
Mhm.
And listen, I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative, and I love I know God loves me, and I love God, and I know that each child is a blessing. And I do also know that there's factors that have been included in some of the lawmaking, and it's codified law that Roe versus Wade is real. And so when you also see gun laws changing in a reverse, like we're trying to see the extension of Roe versus Wade to almost push it out to a full term. I mean, there's been people, and I'm not saying this in fact, but there's people that want to use full term abortion as a solution to pro choice, and I just find that to be egregious because there is a real breathing child inside that body. And
Yeah.
so I have like term limit abortion, and then on the other. But again, I blame the people who reopened abortion laws, and that's the Democrats. Unfortunately, look at it; they extended it in states across the country. Of course, it goes to the Supreme Court. It opened up this debate. Prior to that, this debate was nullified because it was codified in law. They in this movement, and I say they, that wanted to extend it. Well, I think they brought the attention to themselves as far as guns are concerned. Well, you know what the deal is. If you're crazy, you shouldn't have a gun. If you're not
Yeah.
if you're a felon, you shouldn't have a gun. But I want to speak right now to something that I am working really extra hard on.
Mhm.
I want to have a campaign go on across this country where we give much attention is given to inner cities. You said Chicago. I want to go to every poverty-stricken community in this country. West Virginia, for those people that think I'm only targeting, black and brown and tan communities, that's not what I'm saying. But I want to, first and foremost, I want to do a look back, expunge their records, clean people that have criminal records, get them certified and licensed in gun carrying and trained to carry real guns, and let them go carry a gun legally in the streets. That's what we should be doing. Because the more people we take out of the illegal file of people carrying guns, the more apt we are to decrease on crime. That's my opinion.
That's an interesting one. I agree with parts of that. I agree with, like, there are a lot of criminal records out there that we either need to expunge, or we need to like look at certain offenses and say, like, okay, was this actually something that this person needed to go to jail for? If not, if this isn't such an egregious thing, let's not keep this person from holding on to a gun. So, like, there are a lot of people that have been arrested for carrying weed, or if they were addicted to drugs, carrying other kinds of drugs. They weren't dealing, they were just users, and they ended up getting arrested. They lost their right to own a gun. Now, do I think that we should just be arming all these people? That's where I might, like, push back a little bit. But, like, the ability to own a gun, I don't think that should be restricted. The reason that I would say that I would agree with the expunging their criminal records for especially, like, low level offenses is because a lot of people who get arrested for those sorts of things find massive difficulty finding work later on in life. And because of that, they're more likely to reoffend and do some kind of criminal activity, whether because they're desperate and they need some kind of money, or
you're not down with the Doc Holliday version of Solutions? Just fucking shoot it out at the OK Corral?
That's one of the things I really don't like. I just don't think that, like, people say an armed society is a polite society, but I feel like listen, I've gone bar hopping a lot in my life. I feel like if all those motherfuckers were packing, I would see a lot of people get shot in my life.
Legally, you can't carry a gun. If you have a gun, by the way, legally, I have a gun permit. And you can't carry a gun if you're consuming alcohol. That's part of one of the most, I think every state has that rule. And that's a good
I don't know
law.
about Texas. That Texas has very permissive laws. Yeah, Texas has very permissive laws.
I've been down to Texas. I did a documentary with PFA, which is Patriots for America. They're actually well known in the Dallas area. We went down to Del Rio, Texas with them, and they're a militia. And we went on the border to do a documentary. The first thing they gave me when I got off the goddamn plane was a handgun. Carry that, and they wanted to give me a rifle. I'm like, and I'm comfortable with it all. But we were down there to do a documentary, and I mean, it's quite an eye-opening experience. Of course, Florida is similar. So gun control to you is sort of something that you think you see some holes, you see some opportunities to fix it, but you also understand the fundamental rights of gun ownership is to me an equal to First Amendment. I don't know what you feel about that.
I don't know if I would say it is equal. Like, for me, I think that guns are really fun. I think they're really cool. You play a lot of video games, you see them go pow, you hear them go bang. It's fun to shoot them yourself, right? Do I think that it's like a fundamental, like, thing that everybody needs to be packing heat all the fucking time? I don't think so. The amount of times that I've ever needed a gun in my entire life is zero. And that's me living in one of the largest cities in America. But I don't think that it's my place to restrict people from being able to carry guns or own guns. I think that a lot of the problem around guns, and this is why it's pretty low on the priority list in terms of things that I would advocate for. The problem is that, like, both sides overstate their case. So, like, on the left, again, I see a lot of people say, like, really fucking crazy things, like, basically AR-15s are killing like 1 million people a year when it's mostly handguns. Or people on the right will say, like, well, everybody needs to be, like, walking around like we're in the fucking Wild West. And if you're not, if you run out of bullets in your gun and someone else has, if you have a 6-shooter and they have a fucking Glock, well, then you're probably fucked in that exchange unless you're like a sharpshooter. I don't think that either of those worlds are acceptable to me,
So you do the
I hate to play the enlightened centrist, but
No, you really have a sprinkle of liberal, and you have a little bit of sensibility of understanding constitutional rights, and I think that kind of makes you a centrist, or maybe even a libertarian to a sense, to kind of draw you into a category, which I think
we
in this,
once
we
we get
need to
into
get
the
rid of
social
categories.
issues, once we get into the
Yeah.
social issues, you're going to call me a super liberal cuck. But
Well,
like, well, a
we'll
lot
get
of
into it
things.
then.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Let's get into it then. I mean, obviously, we did kind of get into social issues when it came to drug,
Yeah,
laws, and I think social as well is also guns because really, I mean, it's is equal
sure. Yeah,
to a lot of these social conscious decisions that are going on across the country, the movements. But let's talk about poverty. Let's talk about impoverished people in America. What is that doing to a society? Is there way too much reliance on government? Um, what is your opinion of sort of the
yeah.
funded system in the Democrat liberal? And this is guys, you got to face it. I think conservatives, and this is a track record. I think it's proven, and you can fact check this. And I'm not here to defend it because I actually I see it on both sides. But Republicans typically want to put people into self responsibility of work. Democrats seem to put people in positions where, well, they can collect welfare and they create generational welfare systems in cities like Chicago, you brought up. How do we stop that? Is it a problem? Is that a social issue you'd be paying attention to?
So this is actually something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and trying to understand the conservative point of view, because from the way that I look at things, this is going to be like the ultimate fucking super lib cucky thing coming out. Okay, for me, I don't see welfare as a major issue in terms of like people collecting it and not working. The kind of welfare systems that we saw that were extremely permissive and you could just kind of collect and not have to either seek work or be working to collect them were largely either phased out or means tested in the 90s under the Clinton administration as a concession to the Republicans at that time. For me, I think that having a very, very strong social welfare state is a good thing that can open up people to more opportunities in the long run. And it can cost more money, but I think that in places that we see these very large, welfare states, like you look at like the Nordic model, you can look at places like France or Germany, even England to an extent, right? These places have really strong social safety nets that people can fall back on when they need to, but people do want to work. People do produce still, even if they are receiving these government benefits. Is there a way that we can take it too far? Yes, but I don't think that we've reached that point yet. And like in terms of the kinds of things that I would like to see expanded, probably probably a lot of funding towards schools so that we can see people from a very young age get the tools in their repertoire to be able to take care of themselves later on in life, right? Education is a super big thing for me. um I've worked in education a little bit on and off, like either volunteering or actually as a job, and I can see like kids in very, very impoverished neighborhoods who want to learn, who want to have those opportunities given to them. Even as young as like elementary school, they can see that this is like they're in. You can see that they're interested in learning about these things, and if we foster that sort of thing, they'll be able to take care of themselves later on, right? So like the initial investment, and this is one thing that I will grant to the conservatives why they don't like these things, right? You don't see that return on investment immediately, right? Because it's a lagging indicator. You give a bunch of money into the education system, you're gonna have to wait for those kids to not only grow up, but also go through college and then also get a job and then also for their job to actually meaningfully contribute to the economy before you see any return on that investment. But I think that's the sort of thing that we need to focus on, especially now as we're so divided. We're not able to focus on those long-term projects that will make everyone's lives better in the long run. So
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think the social economic issue is so intertwined with political decisions.
mhm,
I mean, there's a lot of if you're going to do it in a scientific way of evidence based proof, I think you're going to look at historically how we got here. Historically, I was just talking about this today. I think about the fact that in Democratic run cities across this country and states with majority Democrat running for years and years and years, we've allowed racial issues to fester, to be exploited, and of course, the George Floyd incident that took place, I think, really put that on the platform for
sure.
everyone to focus on. But it didn't happen overnight. I mean, Minnesota didn't happen overnight. Chicago didn't happen overnight. This has been a history of bad decisions, false promises, and under delivering from government agencies. And to me,
Yeah, I
and by the
agree
way, we
with
have
that.
plenty of evidence at the federal and other levels where Republicans did the same thing. So I'm not hammering down on liberals, but unfortunately for the facts are liberal cities across this country, well, they're failing because of literally because of the
I
failed leadership.
I I hear that talking point so often. The problem with like saying liberal cities is that anytime you get like a massive amount of people together, especially, like in these liberal run cities, you're going to see more liberals be elected because, a lot of times you see college educated people skew more liberal. You're going to see people in poverty skew more liberal in cities. People in poverty in rural areas are going to skew more conservative. But like these cities kind of foster a more liberal mindset because everyone's kind of pushed together. You're going to see like the elites there with their college degrees and their financial jobs, blah 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 blah. So I to say that it's the liberal run cities, I think that 90% of the cities in the United States of any like number of people that's like appreciable is you're gonna see like a liberal city government there. What I would more like to focus on is state level and federal level decisions that make it to where these local municipalities are able to actually fund the things that we want them to fund. We want to fund, infrastructure. So like your streets, bridges, stuff like that. We want to make sure that people have jobs. So, constantly innovating and constantly renovating our crumbling infrastructure, probably going to be a good thing for everybody in that city. Making sure that we have well-funded schools, making sure that we have well-funded, you know, like homeless shelters, and making sure that people that have mental issues are able to get the care that they need if they're homeless. Like these are things that will make everyone's lives better. It'll cost a little bit more, but in the long run, we're going to see returns on those investments that are really, really. You'll be able to see it in your everyday life.
So, Walter, what you're saying there, right? And I think one of the things that's interesting is I'm a big believer in the reverse approach. And this is a great, healthy conversation
Yeah.
because I feel like our founding fathers understood that the strongest form of government is at the local level. We should be deciding who's going to be our dog catcher, how many police cruisers we want on our roads, where we're going to be focusing our energy in our community. Do we want to have a big school, a small school? These are independent choices. People move the communities, and then as it goes up to that system. However, one of the biggest problems is, and this could actually be tied a little bit to Ronald Reagan. As much as I love Ronald Reagan and have his book, not this one, that's George Bush right here, the killer. Then the Ronald Reagan book is over there. But one of the things that ties back to a lot of these established, and these are Republican Democrats, is they began funding systems through federal to the state to local. And once you take money, it's like a job. You got to do the job that's required. So education, you got to teach to the federal level, you got to teach to the state level. I think we should get back to where you only spend what you can afford, you fix the problems you can take care of, and you stop asking the guy above you, your big brother or sister. I guess in this world, transgender world, we can't say either of those things. Your big friend, whoever that is, be politically correct, where and what we're supposed to do, because that decision ultimately seems to be reliant upon you're only going to get this much funding because you're staying in line. So the feds are going to give you $1 million. Well, this community, you're kind of thinking differently. So we're only going to give you 500,000. Picking winners and losers have created West Virginia.
I,
They have created places like this.
I, well, I can't speak to that specifically. I don't know about losing funding because you think differently. If that does happen, I would be against it. But I basically what you're saying, let me make sure I understand you correctly, is that we should only pay for the things that we can. Don't expect anything from a higher form of government and really focus on the local level. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that you have budgets. I did budgets. I managed 20 something $1 million budgets
Mhm.
when I was a first selectman, which is a municipal leader. And that's not a maximum. That's not like Washington D.C. budgets, of course, but it's still a budget number. It's a line item, and what you do is you fill that line item with what you want. You find a way to pay it, and at the end of the day, you don't go over. And
Sure.
when
Yeah, I
you keep
understand
it
what you're saying
simple,
now. Yeah, so I agree. There's been a kind of expansion in people's knowledge about like what's going on in the world, right? And when it comes to like United States politics, you're going to see a lot of people care way more about national politics than they did, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Back then it was much more focused on local and state governments because, that's the sphere of influence that was easy to understand around you. And I think that losing that um, as something that we value greatly is really bad because a lot of the things that lefties want, right? Whether they want to like agree with it or disagree with it, I disagree with it, right? Defund the police. You're not going to do that at the federal level. The federal government doesn't fund the police, right? That's going to be your local level. So if you want that to happen, then you're going to have to vote at the local level. If you want there to be, more funding to education, if you want there to be more funding to this or that, you're going to have to look at your local and state levels and actually care about who's being voted into those positions, right? Because the federal government doesn't control everything down to your everyday life, and it shouldn't, right? It's supposed to give broad legislation about what states are supposed to do or like who we're interacting with on the international stage or broad monetary policy. And yeah, I know what you're saying as like a final point about like how much money that do we have and we don't spend more than that. I would agree on the state and the local level because they don't have the ability to print their own currency, but um, I've
Well,
been
they could now with Bitcoin. We can do that with Bitcoin now. We can start to
oh
create
I
our own dime.
I don't know
We'll
enough
get
about that, but like when
Yeah,
it
we'll
comes
get
to
we'll get into that in
yeah.
a little bit. So covering a lot of topics. One of the things that I think is a commonality is there's a little bit of the middle road here that I think you and I both can find a way to agree on to come to. I think ultimately on these topics, especially this one, uh, and you mentioned it, like you think that we should be putting more of an investment into the education. And quite honestly, I would close down the budgets on some of these wasted programs that we don't see the results from because I'm a result based guy, right?
Mhm.
If I say $1 million goes into a project, and yes, we'll give it a time frame for which we can build results that are positive, but we don't see them. Well, we're wasting money, and we could be spending that, say, on a child who maybe needs a computer, maybe needs to get taught a different, sort of curriculum that isn't being educated to the right skill set to be that person in the future that can be successful. But I think that comes down to sort of the mindset of that liberal versus conservative view of how they allow government into their lives,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of that fear in there. One of the other things I think is a an interesting conversation amongst the people in this country is just the divide over. I mean, just when I say Donald Trump, what does that do to you? What does that do to you?
I mean, I don't like the guy. I don't think he's very smart, but like I don't get like triggered and like start shaking and crying blood or anything.
Have you seen that in some of the folks that maybe on the more liberal or more socialist side that you might talk to?
Um I've never personally like seen it myself. I've seen, cringe compilations on YouTube about people getting super, super triggered about just like people saying Trump. There's a certain kind of liberal that I really, really fucking hate. And I call them Harry Potter liberals. But you could call them pop liberals or, anything like
Why Harry Potter? Because Harry Potter is a
because you'll
very
see
popular
their
person
like
here.
yeah, because you'll see people on Twitter who have their Harry Potter house in their bio, and they have like this very strange way of looking at the world. Like the government is like always good unless they're the bad guys. In which case, you just have to like use the good guys to get the bad guys out of power, and then basically keep everything the exact same. And it's just like a really cancer fucking like you could also say that they're like Hillary Clinton Democrats maybe or like kind of like pop feminists. I have a very difficult time trying to explain what it is, but like there's this really cancerous type of liberal that I really don't like. And I think that oh Lord, I'm losing my train of thought. Uh
Hey, let me ask you, Walter, while you're
yeah,
getting your
sure.
change, what's your IQ?
I will never take an IQ test. I don't think
Uh,
if it's too low, I'll be upset. If it's really high, I'll also be upset.
I have a
Yeah.
feeling it's not going to be too low. I think you're pretty, you're a smart guy, clearly. How long you been playing around and monkeying around with computers since you were like 6 years old?
Yeah, probably.
Can you build a computer?
I built mine, yeah.
Yeah, of course I knew that already. And you play the bass guitar, so you have music on your side too, right?
Uh, I I don't play bass. I have a bass. I'm in a band. I do guitar, keys, I sing. I used to be a vocal major in
So
college.
you're musical as well, which
Yeah.
obviously we know, because I trust science. You know, even though I don't want to put a shot in my arm, I trust science. Science tells me that you're more intellectually sound than even me. So I know that you have a much more intellectual depth of thought, and the way you're able to carry the
Appreciate that.
conversation on speaks to something that I wish we could bottle a little bit, quite honestly, and put it in a little bit of everybody. Because quite frankly, that trigger moment that I asked you why did, and you said, you know, appreciate, you know, you think he's dumb, and I don't think Donald Trump's dumb personally. Me, I think he's actually brilliant. I talked about it today, and I'd love to get your opinion. I equated Donald Trump to the guy on the playground who was a really good athlete. And then, yeah, I know you can say his body isn't now, but
Yeah,
I'm saying on
yeah.
the playground, he was the good athlete. And he was the guy that every day at recess would pick the team. And everyone wanted to be on Donald Trump's team. And let me just say, let me talk it through.
Hmm.
So let's say that Donald Trump picks a team, and there's a group of Johnnies and Debbies and Timmys and Karens and, you know, whatever you want to do. We put on the sideline, and they don't get picked. So they're like, man, I want to get picked by Donald Trump. And they grow up, and you know they want to be picked. They want to get that chance to get in the game, and they remember that history when that tough guy. And by the way, I don't advocate for this, but I'm
Hmm.
just saying this analogy, right? So Donald Trump goes through and he gets become a real estate guy, and he gets the $1 million from his dad. And he does success when he's got connections. And by the way, this entire time of evolution of Donald J. Trump, every Democrat and liberal took his donations.
Oh, sure.
They took his friendship. They wanted photo ops with him, and they loved the Donald. Everyone called him the Donald. The moment that he decided to get off his golden, covered toilet seat and go and run for a position, which I think he didn't need to do this. He didn't need to do this, but he did it. The trigger moment for most of these Americans that I talk about was the fact that there was an arrogant guy. He didn't do it the same way. And by the way, if there was I always said this, and maybe you would agree, if Bernie Sanders got elected, we would have probably been in the same boat, in my opinion. There would have been a craziness to this country because of the socialist movement that Bernie brought. This is why Donald Trump or him were important in this science
I
topic.
I think that I don't know if I don't think that either Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders would have led us to this point because of them themselves. I think really what's brought us here to this point of like no understanding between sides, no ability to empathize with the other side, kind of dehumanizing people that don't agree with you, is largely the internet because you're able to really put yourself in a hug box, you know. The reason that I think most people don't like Donald Trump, even like on the lib side of things, I think it has less to do with like the playground analogy that you used. I think it's mostly to do with I I think people have this very singular view of the world, and this is what a lot of the liberals that I was talking about earlier, they kind of look at the world this way, where like there's a specific correct way to do things. We all like stay in our lanes. The government will do the good things for us, right? As long as we vote in the righteous people. And you know, they didn't see Trump as a righteous person. Now, throughout his campaign, like especially 2016 Trump, who was way more unhinged in his rhetoric than later on, where he kind of toned down a little bit until 2020. I might be looking at the past in rose tinted glasses, though. I can't say for sure. But basically, like I think that the way that he talked was outside of what the acceptable, you know, realm of conversation was supposed to be at. I think that he was pretty crude. I think that a lot of people saw the things that he said as being racist. A lot of people saw it that way, and you know, once you are labeled as like the bad, there's no coming back from that in like a broad like social sense, right? Which I can understand people seeing Donald Trump that way. What I think is the really bad thing that came out of that is the kind of way that we put ourselves into hug boxes on the internet. People seeing anyone that supported Donald Trump in that way, and also putting them into that you're the bad guy, and therefore like whatever happens to you is okay. Um,
Doesn't it sometimes, and you know, we're kind of talking about, because Donald Trump and the presidency is a trigger to certain people in this country. Obviously, you know, so we could debate all the different things that took place, but
Mm.
Do you understand why there's a frustration with people that supported his movement and they feel like maybe they're being attacked personally when some of the corporate media
Oh,
and
sure,
the things
one
come out and
million
say,
percent.
like, for example, a white guy with a beard, maybe who wears a camo hat, drinks Bush Light, and goes to NASCAR races,
Mhm.
you're automatically a white nationalist racist, right?
It's very fucking stupid. It's so fucking stupid. I think I don't know how bad I was about this, but I definitely was the kind of person for a while, especially when I was younger, to just be like, "Oh, you're a fucking fascist, you're a fucking lunatic, et cetera, et cetera. You're a Nazi, et cetera, whatever it is." All, and I had a shift. I want to say probably June of last year, where I had been calming down on that. Not everyone that we disagree with is a Nazi. We shouldn't do that. But I I had a conversation with a guy, Andrew Wilson, or he used to go by Big Papa Fascist, right? He's a hardcore right winger, right? I don't think he's actually a fascist, but after a conversation or two with him, he got me to read fascist literature. So now I know what a fascist is. Now I know what a Nazi is and what they believe. And I can point towards people that are, like, I think Nick Fuentes, I think that guy's a fascist. I think that he's like actually a Nazi. Like after
Yeah, but
reading,
what do you? So what?
sure.
I appreciate you saying that, but I'm really asking what you mean by you think he's a Nazi, for example.
Sure.
What in the American landscape provides a difference between him and a sort of a white nationalist? I guess is also probably comparable to a Nazi in
Yeah.
your opinion. And then what is the difference between that and a conservative and a liberal? Then because there seems like we could probably all three be sitting at a countertop. How can you tell that, and how do you define that?
Um, well, if you can never tell by just looking at someone what their political leanings are. That's impossible. You might be able to there used to be like the alt right haircut that a bunch of dudes got, but it was also just kind of popular. So like some people would take that haircut and say, "Oh, that guy might be kind of sussy." But when it comes to how do you tell, it can be hard, especially if you don't know a lot about these things. When it comes to like your average everyday conservative, I think a lot of them are, they might be more traditional. The father, goes out and is the breadwinner, and the mom stays at home and takes care of the kids. They might believe that sort of thing, and then also a Nazi might believe that sort of thing. But what I think separates, the like everyday conservative, from fascists and white nationalists or Nazis. Um, is like the academic term of like liberalism. Not that like you guys are liberals in the way that we talk about them in the United States, but like John Locke, Hobbes, social contracts, constitutions, the kind of philosophy that the founding fathers had. They were liberals in the classical sense. And so I would say that if you're a liberal, you're not a fascist, right? You might say some like things that I super disagree with, or there might even be conservatives or liberals that are racist. I would like very much really hate racism. But when it comes to fascism, these are people. And you can make the arguments that there are people on the left like this, right? Communists and stuff who I've fought with, who are inherently anti-liberal, who don't believe in democracy, who don't believe in equal rights for all, who don't believe that, who believe in a racial hegemony in our country, where a liberal, broadly speaking, a liberal would not be in favor of that. So if I was to speak directly about Nick Fuentes, I would point towards him saying we need to keep America either where it's at right now or increase the white population. His constant questioning of the Holocaust might point me towards the fact that he might be, a Nazi. The kinds of conversations I've had with his viewer base, right? Where I've argued with them, and I've put those videos on YouTube. The kind of conversations where they start talking about the culture of America and maintaining our culture, but really what they want to say is they don't like rap music, and they don't like hip hop, and they don't like black influence into our culture. So like
Is that what you're hearing? So when you hear that, that's what you're hearing or that's how you're translating whatever's being said that might be that
yeah,
platform
it,
sort of
it's
objection to.
it can be really difficult to identify it sometimes. But once you hear the same kind of talking points come out of a group of people for long enough, right? I've been doing it for the past 2.5 years. Uh, I've heard these talking points a million times. I can kind of tell, like, immediately, growing up in the South, a Republican or a libertarian from a fucking weird white nationalist Nazi who wants to, create like programs to deport all black people and all brown people out of the country to at least 10% of the population, So it's, you get to see these like
Well,
patterns growing in there.
those are the kooky sons of bitches that give conservatives or
Yeah, I agree.
patriot loving Americans a bad name.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's been politicized and weaponized by the corporate media. They take those analogies and say, if you stand up and say, I'm a Trump supporter, well, now naturally you're getting labeled with, you also have to be a nationalist. You also have to be a racist. And I just think that's egregious. I'm a
Yeah.
great example of that. I challenge anyone to go look at my track record publicly, who I am. And, I think it's the stupidest thing in the world when I hear people say, I got a black friend. You know what? I could give a fuck less who you're friends with. Just who are you, right? Judge
Mhm.
me for who I am. Even though I might disagree with you, doesn't mean that I'm that enemy that you assume I am
Yeah.
because I'm part of something that you don't believe in. I think there's a 6 out of 10 rule that I live by that works a lot for that. So let me ask you about this national civil rights. Civil rights
Mhm.
in America. In your opinion, what does civil rights mean to you? And do you think civil rights specifically apply to certain classes of citizens in this country, racial, economic, socially, or educationally? Civil rights, in
Yeah.
your opinion.
Um, I think one of the things that I really love about the United States is the fact that we can recognize different groups of people as being under attack, either like directly, like we looked at, pre-civil rights era, like the things that Martin Luther King was fighting against, like lynchings in the streets and separate but equal type stuff that you'd see in your history books. So I think that civil rights, broadly speaking, in the United States is looking at groups that have been disadvantaged or are still disadvantaged in some way, either socially or economically, and recognizing that, and then trying to ameliorate those things and give people who were born into situations that aren't as, I hate to use the libcuck word, that aren't as privileged, right? And give them that opportunity. I think equality of opportunity is something that we are always going to be striving for, but may never achieve. But it's something to always strive for. I don't believe in equality of outcome. There are some people that try and make that argument. I think that's really stupid. But like, for instance, if we were to look at like current discourse, a lot of civil rights conversations are around like trans people, right? So the kind of stuff that I don't really prioritize in terms of like the things that I talk about, trans sports bills. I don't care about these things very much. Like I understand why people might be upset about them, but like
Well, what way are they? What way do you understand? Upset for or against, or just in
I can
general? Either
understand
way.
both. I can understand upset on both sides of that, like
So
100%.
you do advocate, not to cut you off, because this is a good social discussion that we could probably find out exactly where we both land on. You do support, obviously, transgender rights. If you're a child who, say, sometime after, say a 6-year-old or 8-year-old that wants to talk to their mom or dad about maybe removing parts of their body because they believe they're not that part, or adding parts of their
Right. Yeah.
body. Do you believe that's appropriate? Do you think there should be an age limit on that?
The way that it works right now, from my understanding, is basically a kid will, recognize something different about themselves, right? They might lean towards one gender or the other that it doesn't align with their birth sex. That we, it's like that whole thing. We see that, and then they'll go to a therapist and then they'll consult them, and then they might be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, right? That doesn't mean that they're going to be trans growing up. It could be like a temporary thing. For a lot of people it is. And they might prescribe them like hormone blockers if they're prepubescent, right? And they're about to go into puberty to give them time to figure out whether they're trans or not.
Why,
Most
first of all,
Sure.
I just, I raised two children. Of course, I'm very open as well, and I could care not, if you're 18 years old to serve your country, if you want to chop your nuts off and sew some
Sure.
boobs
When it
on
comes
or
to like
whatever, do it.
those kinds of like extreme surgeries, that should probably happen like once someone's 18, right?
But just to qualify, Walter, you would approve of the drugs for children under 12 years old who were feeling some of these conditions that you outlined?
I would support uh, wherever the science is. I'll support from the understanding of the science that I have now, and the way that things work now. Like puberty blockers would be given to someone that is around that age, that is like about to go into puberty, right, and about to have those changes to their body. Obviously, this isn't something that you want to see happening long term, right? So give them like another year or two to understand what's going on. If it turns out that they're not trans and they can go off those hormone blockers, they'll undergo the puberty of the sex that they were born into, and then they can live life as normally. And if not, then they can start the hormone replacement therapy and either start estrogen or testosterone depending on what sex they are. When it comes to the surgeries, like specifically, probably should wait until they're a little bit older, just because you don't want to like pull the trigger on that super early. But the hormone stuff, I think we have a good enough understanding as it is right now to make the call, like whether someone should or shouldn't be on hormone blockers and whether they should move to the replacement therapy, because those things still can be reversed.
It's kind of a interesting. It's an interesting conversation. I disagree with a lot of what, from my perspective, what you're saying,
Sure.
in a way of like, I really think, we used to call girls who were better athletes than me, they were called tomboys.
Oh, no, you know what? I fucking
And
agree with you. Let me tell you something.
and by the way, those tomboys grew up to be some of the hottest women that you can find. And then there's also that some men who were some of the greatest athletes that I've been friends with and know personally, who are more flamboyant than Marilyn Monroe, and I love them either way. It's just
Yeah,
who
let me
they
tell
grew
you
into.
something. I think that one thing that we've kind of fucked up on is not allowing for people who don't fit into like the very traditional gender binary of man and woman. Like it felt like when I was growing up, I did see people that were tomboys, and I did see more feminine dudes, or stuff like that, flamboyantly gay men. And I think that allowing for someone to be a tomboy should be totally fine, right? We have the like super masculine lesbians that are you might mistake for being a dude until they tell you, and they haven't undergone any kind of hormone therapy, they haven't undergone any surgeries or anything like that. They're just really really masculine ladies because that's the way they want to look. And I think that that should be something that we can allow in society, and that people shouldn't like try and push them towards being trans, or saying like, oh, you're not actually a woman, what you are is a trans man and you just don't know it yet. I think that allowing for a wide spectrum of expressions should be allowed, while still understanding that like trans people exist and getting them the healthcare that they need.
So listen, they do exist, and we do need to at least admit that there is a. But I have an issue when it comes to taxpayers' money paying for specific things, and I'm gonna pull something up here.
Mhm.
Hopefully you can see it. So I'm gonna take us off the screen
Okay.
and see if this worked. Hopefully I don't choke here. Okay, I'm gonna take your screen off. You'll be able to see it, I think. Make sure you can.
Yes, I can see it.
Can you see this? Give me a thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay, so take a look at it.
All right, what is this?
So when you got a chance to see that, you saw on there that is a standardized document from a school here in Connecticut that is being distributed from the kindergarten classes, I guess 5 years old at the youngest, to 18 years old, and they're asking those specific questions. And let me go on and ask you this: do you remember when you were 5 and you would get asked, "What do you want to do when you grow up?"
Hmm.
And you would say, "I want to be Superman."
Yeah, shit like that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, how do you ask a child who might be dealing with today? I mean, I can't say that I had those thoughts. I mean, I definitely had all kinds. I mean, you're going through an evolution like a frog does, from tadpole, water swimming, to hopping, to living in these different conditions around you. And yes, we need to be conscious and sensitive, because there is a mental part of evolution of each one of us as humans that doesn't coincide with what I want or you want. We need to blend that together, but that's part of what we call society. And societies learn that process, and we have learned how to respect. I mean, the Me Too movement certainly opened up our eyes to how women were treated in celebrity status. But by the way, the only topic of transgender debate is about men who become women, who compete against
Yeah, it's
women, and it seems to dominate the conversation, which kind of to me says, where are the women that become men? Why aren't
well,
they
they exist, but
star
nobody
quarterbacks?
pays. They exist, but nobody pays attention to them because,
Well, I don't hear about them, so I don't think
yeah.
anybody knows about it.
See, this is like an actual like issue that a lot of trans men talk about, that they're invisible because nobody cares about them unless they're being used as some sort of bludgeon for a political message. So, for instance, in my state, in Texas, I believe it's in Texas, there is a trans man, a trans dude that was in high school, right? Born a girl, transitioned, wanted to compete in men's sports in wrestling, but they it might have been in Arizona, I don't remember, I'm sorry, but whatever state it was, the state legislature said that they have to compete in their birth sex's sport. So there was this dude being on testosterone wrestling cis girls, right? Not because he wanted to, but because the state forced him to, because of the way that the law worked, right?
Oh yeah,
So
that log went down many years ago. I was in high school. I think I had to wrestle off against a girl one time and dominated her in strength. It was just ridiculous, but didn't mean that the other girl I saw. I mean, my son ended up wrestling girls in high school when he was wrestling, and there
mm,
were some girls that whooped his ass.
yeah, I mean,
Straight
there's
up.
always going to be like some like crossover, and I think that when it comes to like high school sports, I care even less about the trans sports bills that get passed. Like, I think that it there might be no real appreciable difference there, but once we get into like the Olympics and stuff, that's where a lot of the arguments are happening right now, especially like collegiate sports and
You know
shit
what's
like that.
bullshit about the whole thing is we have sports athletes. I don't know there's a coach that exists who doesn't want to win. I mean, that's why you coach. You're going to take the best qualified athlete and you're going to put that person on the field. Now, there's a social aspect that you might have a total nut who, goes out drinking and smoking weed and, doing everything he's not supposed or she's not supposed to do every night, and she's violating or he's violating the rules. But when it comes down to us picking and choosing people because of gender over qualifications, that's the exact opposite of equal rights. To me, that's actually blowing it. Like, I'd rather say, okay, women, you play in the NFL. You go ahead and get in there. Go ahead. Go get in there. Don't tell me
There
they're
are lots
man.
of people that are like making this argument. Like, for me, I really don't care. I want people to be able to compete if they want to compete. Maybe there's like a cis women's league, like people that are born a woman, raised a woman, lived their life as a woman, and then like an open league where anybody can just like go in there. I don't really fucking care. The things that I care about, like predominantly, are there are some states right now that don't have protections for trans people or gay people. They can just like be evicted with no notice if their landlord doesn't like them, or if they have like religious
But that
like
falls.
issues.
But that falls in federal law, and that's where you have a process that should protect you. And
Yeah, that's what I'm
honestly,
saying. Like, those are the things that
yeah,
I want to see passed into law, both at the state and at the federal level. Fuck anybody that wants to like fuck with people's right to work, even if they're trans. There are people. There are some states where you're allowed to fire someone just because they're trans or gay. There are some states that allow, well, actually not gay anymore because of a Supreme Court decision a year or two ago. But trans, for sure, you can still be fired if you're trans. You can still be evicted if you're trans. Like, these are things that are actually really, really important, right? Being able
but
to like recognize those, put policy out that helps them not get fucked over by people that just don't like them through bigotry or
right.
whatever. And
And I agree.
yeah.
I agree. Listen, I honestly agree 100%. I mean, I don't want. And first of all, people who are trans and people who are, by the way, I think the victims also are the gay communities in this country who fought very hard to be identified with the equal rights, marriage, for example. Not that long ago, this is kind of codified, obviously, that kind of discussion. But now it seems like, well, even within the gay community, and I have a lot of folks on here. John Paul Moran comes on. He was on today. He calls himself the most, conservative gay man in America,
Mhm.
and yet he and his community feels in his circle. I'm not saying all. Feel like the transgender community is really taking away for the battle that was waged
The
for equal
problem,
rights within that community.
I I I think the problem is that uh there is an very, very online on Twitter and on Facebook, like this group of people that are very, very adamant in, their progressive leanings, right? And I think that they have in their heart good intentions, but the way they go about them is fucking so stupid. It blows my fucking mind. I think that most of the time, trans people are not going to be the like crazy blue-haired feminists that you see screaming, because they heard the word Trump, right? I think that most of the time they just want to, they want to get their hormones, they want to get their surgeries if they need them, and they want to blend into society. I think that's by and large what most people that are trans want to do. And like in a lot of the circles that I run in, those are the people that I interact with, right? I have a lot of people that I know in real life that are trans that are just the most regular, fun-loving, chill people that you would ever meet. But there is a particular community online that interacts with everybody and attacks people if they don't 100% agree with them, that aren't willing to give an inch to conservatism, because they feel like if they give an inch, then the conservatives are going to take a mile. And I wish I could appeal to them in a way and like help them understand like there are some things that you're saying that are just fucking wrong. Okay, there are some things that you're saying that are just like fucking crazy, but you need to like take a step back from your advocacy that you're doing online, and see that that's what you're see that what you're saying is crazy. Like the one of the things that really blows my mind is there's like the whole like I identify as a attack helicopter stuff that you've probably heard a lot of conservatives say. Some people are saying, yeah, you should be able to identify as an attack helicopter, and that's totally valid because they feel like to give the conservatives an inch and say no, obviously, identifying as an attack helicopter is fucking stupid, right? They feel like giving an inch to the conservative side on that would be, just lunacy and would take away all of their rights. So it's really difficult trying to appeal to both sides on that.
Well, something that we probably could really hammer down on this, and maybe a future conversation. I'm trying to set up some actual, some groups to come in, maybe set up a panel discussion from different platforms and different people on this very discussion. And honestly, I think the healthiest way to approach this is to approach it with an open honesty of saying, well, maybe I just don't know an answer.
Mm.
Maybe I don't know exactly the best approach. I stand strong in my beliefs of this, and I do think a lot of times political beliefs get injected, but I thought more importantly, I think the religious injection of people's positions on this topic are also sometimes clouding issues. Hey, listen, let's kind of let it down a little bit. We're talking
Mhm.
about transgender and Americans, and one of the things that just popped up. I got a message from it was a New York Post article, and Americans' men's penises are only 59th biggest in the world. Do you have any comment on that? Because I will tell you right now, we all want to be from Haiti because Haiti has the biggest male penises in the world, I guess. So I don't know what's going on in Haiti. Do you
Listen,
know?
what we need to do is we need to dump more testosterone into the water supply. All right, just masculate everybody, give everyone
Yes.
giant
Yes.
muscles. That way we
Yes.
can maintain
Yes.
American hegemony. All right, we have the
Yes.
biggest dicks, the biggest
Right. Right.
muscles.
Right.
Let's
Now, do
fucking
we
go.
do this only with white males, or do we do this with all genders? Because I want to make
All
sure I'm
genders, we
clear on
just
your.
dump it straight into the
But
water
all
supply.
races and genders. You're saying
Hell yeah.
women, men, everyone's going to be giants with big penises and big.
We're
I
Americans,
guess
baby.
big
We need
boobs.
to make sure we're
Yeah.
dominant. All right.
You're a sick guy, Walter. You're a sick guy. I can tell it. So it was a cool conversation
Yeah,
with you, man. I
absolutely.
don't know. We had a lot of social issues conversations, but just kind of a laid back conversation. Is this typically how it goes on your platform?
No, not at all. Not at all. I've had a lot of really, really vitriolic conversations with people. Like you say, you're thinking about pulling up a panel, and my first thought was, holy shit, panels here on Twitch. If you were to come onto a panel here on Twitch, there would be a lot more. Uh, do you know like the term internet blood sports?
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of internet blood sports in
Well, you
these
should
circles that
invite
I
me
run
on
in.
to one of your panels if you have a panel, and
Yeah,
have me
dude.
on. I'm always willing to go and do some crossover stuff. Listen. This is how I handle myself. I'm strong in my. I have a. I'm fortunate in some ways when I speak. There's enough documentation about when I've spoke publicly that I don't need to defend my position. I just know I'm strong in it, and I don't always agree with one side, the right side, so to speak. And that's kind of why I think I identify with everyone's issues. However, I'm strong in the fact that I believe we need to let kids be kids. I think we need to establish some real ground rules when it comes to where we introduce some of these conversations of, who you're, massage through it mentally. Mental health is important. I think we didn't get into that in this conversation. One of the weakest investments in this country is mental health.
True.
I think we could really apply some attention there. But I also think, look, society was a little better off back in the 70s when the biggest excitement was getting the Ronald McDonald's Happy Meal coming out on the Nugget meal was
The
coming out,
internet has changed a
and
lot of
we
stuff,
didn't worry
buddy.
about this shit. We worried about riding our
Yeah.
bicycles. We weren't worried about playing games. We were playing with sticks in the woods, and maybe getting back to a little of that might be actually the game changer.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree. There's lots of things that I think that general happiness was higher in the past, and I think that like the main reason for that again is the I both love and I hate the internet. I think that people need to learn how to interact with other people off of the internet and go out into their communities and learn how to talk to people. I think that loneliness is a huge driver for a lot of extremist politics and extremist views on the world. And if everybody went outside and just found a hobby or went to a bar and just like talked to strangers every once in a while, they'd be able to get a less doomer outlook on the world, right? And be happier.
Well, as we're coming out of this debatable, appropriate or not COVID situation, that lockdown and all the other stuff that went on, and you said you believe in science, so I'm going to assume that that's the case. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we had this scientific sort of, I guess, experiment on this, shots, the reaction, the
Mhm.
government control, the implementing of different rules. But we're coming out of it now, and I hope it stays that way. I hope it doesn't go back. But I do see that there's an opportunity for us, meaning people with different opinions, to not rely upon government to do this, but ourselves. Exactly to your point, Walter. Go to the local coffee shops. Go to the local place. Go to a Democratic town committee meeting if you're a Republican, and sit in there and say, "Hey, I'm not here to argue and fight. I'm here to actually learn, and maybe there's some way that I can actually help you understand why I feel the way I do." And I think that's the important part. That's why I think platforms like this, these are the future platforms. NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox, Newsmax. These are great places if that's what you want to hear, that dialogue. If you want to hear a difference of opinion, you have to go to social media platforms like this and some of the ones that are growing. Walter, thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, dude.
I'm like the poor man's Joe Rogan and kind of the dumb Tucker Carlson's uncle. But thank you so much for coming on. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
absolutely.
Where can people find you, bro? And tell them where they can check you out.
Yeah, I'm on Twitch. I'm on everything as Sondsol, SONDSOL, all one word. You can catch me doing a lot of debates with both very, very far left-leaning people and very, very far right-leaning people. I have a lot of really nice discussions with people that are closer to me in the middle, but I'm willing to hear anybody out. So yeah, those are the platforms you can find me. Twitter. If you guys want to talk to me on my stream and argue with me about how much of a soy libcuck I am, I'm also very available to talk on my stream.
All right, brother. Hey, stay in the back room for a minute till I sign off, and then I want to chat with you. Okay.
All right, absolutely.